My name is Nate, and I fix broken things for a living. Air conditioning units, heating systems, ventilation ducts, anything that keeps people comfortable in their little bubbles of denial. 38 years old, hands permanently stained with grease, married to a woman who apparently thinks our vows came with a warranty that expired somewhere along the way. The irony wasn't lost on me that I spent my days repairing other people's climate control while my own marriage had been stuck on deep freeze for months. It started with the small things, the way it always does. Erica coming home later from her job at TechFlow Solutions, claiming extra hours in HR. Her phone face down on every surface like a guilty secret. New perfume that smelled expensive, too expensive for our budget. "You're being paranoid, Nate," she'd say with that practiced smile that used to make my heart skip. Now it just made my stomach turn. "I'm working hard for us, for our future." Our future, right. I was under the Henderson's AC unit on Maple Street when Todd called. My best friend since high school, ex-cop turned security consultant, voice gravelly from too many cigarettes and not enough sleep. "You free for a beer tonight?" he asked. "Got something to tell you about your wife." My wrench slipped, scraping knuckles against the metal housing. What kind of something? The kind that requires alcohol and privacy. That evening at Murphy's Bar, a dive that smelled like stale beer and broken dreams, Todd slid a manila envelope across the scarred wooden table. Inside were photos, grainy surveillance shots of Erica's car parked outside the Marriott downtown. Timestamps showed a pattern, every Tuesday and Thursday for the past 6 weeks. "Who?" I asked, though part of me already knew. "Wes Dalton, her boss, also her ex from college, in case you forgot." I hadn't forgotten. Wes Dalton, 39 years old, 6'2", drove a souped-up Mustang, wore suits that cost more than I made in a month. When Erica got hired at TechFlow, she'd mentioned casually that her new supervisor was someone she'd dated briefly in college. "Ancient history," she'd laughed. "We're practically strangers now." Strangers who apparently met at hotels twice a week. I drove home in silence, those surveillance photos burning a hole in my jacket pocket. The house looked the same as always. Modest 2-story colonial, white picket fence, the American dream wrapped in vinyl siding. But something felt different now, like seeing familiar furniture rearranged in the dark. Erica was in the kitchen, bathed in the warm glow of light streaming through our window. The same light that now seemed to highlight every lie she'd told. "Working late again tonight?" I asked, keeping my voice casual. "Probably. Big project deadline coming up. Wes has us all pulling extra hours." There it was, his name dropping from her lips like honey laced with poison. Must be nice having a boss who cares so much about his employees. She glanced at me sharply, but I was already turning away, grabbing my toolbox and keys. Just another day fixing other people's broken systems while mine rotted from the inside. The confrontation came 3 weeks later. I'd been watching, documenting, preparing myself for the inevitable conversation. She stood there in our living room, still in work clothes that were wrinkled in all the wrong places, calculating her next move. Deny everything, admit to drinks, but nothing more. Go on the offensive. She chose option 3. "You know what, Nate? Yes, I had drinks with Wes. Yes, we talked about more than work. And maybe I've been spending time with someone who actually appreciates me, who doesn't treat me like a piece of furniture that came with the house." The admission hit like a punch to the solar plexus, but I kept my voice level. "How long? Does it matter?" "It matters to me." She laughed, a bitter sound that echoed off our walls. 2 months, and before you ask, yes, we've slept together. But we used protection, so it doesn't really count. It's not like I was trying to get pregnant or leave you. It was just fun. The casual cruelty of it, the dismissive wave of her hand, the way she minimized 8 years of marriage to just fun. It should have sent me into a rage. Instead, I felt something cold and calculating settle into my bones. "I see," I said. She blinked, clearly expecting more of a reaction. "That's it? That's all you have to say?" "What would you like me to say, Erica?" "I don't know. Something. Anything. Fight for me. Get angry. Show me you actually care." I looked at my wife, really looked at her. The woman I'd married, built a life with, trusted completely. The woman who just told me she'd been sleeping with her ex-boyfriend for 2 months. But it didn't count because she'd used protection. "I care," I said quietly, "more than you'll ever know." Something in my tone made her step back, but I was already walking toward the stairs. "I'm going to bed. Lock the door when you come up." I left her standing in the living room, and for the first time in months, I slept soundly. The waiting was over. Now the real work could begin. The next morning, I woke up with the clarity that comes after a storm passes. Erica was already gone. Early meeting, according to the note on the kitchen counter. But when you've been married to someone for 8 years, you know their routines, their blind spots, their assumptions. Erica assumed I was predictable, passive, the kind of man who'd sulk and drink beer and eventually forgive her because it was easier than starting over. She was about to learn how wrong assumptions could be. I started cataloging her lies the way I'd map a faulty duct system, methodically, systematically, looking for patterns. Tuesday and Thursday, late meetings that always coincided with long showers and immediate laundry. Friday, girls' nights that left her smelling like hotel soap and expensive cologne. Gym bags that appeared and disappeared without explanation. The GPS tracker I installed on her car cost $29 on Amazon, a device I'd originally bought to keep track of my work van after it was stolen last year. Magnetic attachment, real-time location updates to my phone, completely legal to track my own wife's vehicle. The data was illuminating. Tuesday and Thursday trips to the Marriott downtown, always between 6 and 10 p.m. Friday night visits to Wes Dalton's house in the upscale Riverside neighborhood. Weekend shopping trips that included stops at Victoria's Secret and expensive restaurants I'd never been to. She was living a double life, and I was funding it. But it was the cloud backups of our bank statements that really opened my eyes. Charges I didn't recognize. Lingerie, dinners, hotel parking fees, all strategically timed around her work meetings. I started a spreadsheet, documenting every suspicious transaction, every timeline discrepancy, every lie wrapped in the guise of career ambition. The most disturbing part was creating a ledger of our intimate life. Dates, frequency, her level of enthusiasm, or lack thereof. The pattern was undeniable. As her affair intensified, our marriage became a desert. What used to happen twice a week became twice a month, then barely at all. The math was simple and nauseating. That weekend, Erica's friend Jade threw a backyard barbecue. I stood by the grill, flipping burgers and listening to the suburban wives gossip over wine spritzers. Jade, 33 and surgically enhanced, was holding court with her usual crowd of neighborhood queens. Marriage is like a business, she was saying, gesturing with her glass. You have to keep your husband interested, but you also need to maintain your market value. A little competition never hurt anyone. What do you mean? Asked Karen from down the street. Jade leaned in conspiratorially. I mean, sometimes a woman needs to explore her options, keep her skills sharp. As long as you're discreet and use protection, what's the harm? Men do it all the time. The other women giggled nervously. I flipped a burger with more force than necessary, the sizzle matching the heat building in my chest. Of course, some women are better at it than others, Jade continued. Take Erica, for instance. She's always been good at getting what she wants from men. Remember in college? She had that whole thing with Wes Dalton, then dropped him for that pre-med student, then Jade. Erica's voice cut through the chatter like a blade. She'd appeared beside the group, her smile tight. Maybe we should talk about something else. Oh, come on. We're all friends here. I'm just saying you've always been smart about managing your relationships. I watched my wife's face carefully. The practiced smile never wavered, but something flickered in her eyes. Guilt, fear, or just annoyance at Jade's big mouth. That flicker told me everything I needed to know. This wasn't a momentary lapse in judgment. This was structural damage, rot that went deeper than I'd imagined. That night, after the guests had gone home, she checked her phone constantly, always angling the screen away from me. I noticed how she'd started going to the gym 3 times a week, a sudden fitness kick that coincided perfectly with her extra work hours. The new lingerie I glimpsed in the laundry basket, tags still attached, sizes that flattered her figure in ways I hadn't seen in years. But it was Tuesday night that confirmed my worst suspicions. She came home at 9:30, claiming she'd grabbed dinner with the team after their late meeting. Her lipstick was gone, her hair slightly mussed, despite the bobby pins that should have held it in place. She smelled like hotel soap and another man's cologne. How was dinner? I asked from the couch, not looking up from the TV. Fine, just work stuff. You know how it is. I didn't know how it was. I'd never cheated on my wife, but I was learning fast. The GPS data showed she'd never been to a restaurant. She'd driven straight from TechFlow to the Marriott, spent 3 hours there, then drove home. The bank statement would later show a charge for hotel parking, but no restaurant bill. Another lie, cataloged and filed away with all the others. I realized then that this wasn't just about Wes Dalton. This was about a fundamental flaw in the system. A wife who thought she was smarter than her husband, more sophisticated, more deserving of excitement and romance. The affair was just a symptom. The real problem was that Erica had never truly seen me as an equal partner worth respecting. That revelation should have hurt more than it did. Instead, it felt like finally identifying the source of a persistent leak, the first step toward a proper repair. The confrontation, when it finally happened, wasn't the explosive argument I'd expected. It was quiet, almost clinical, like discussing a faulty thermostat with a client. I found her in the kitchen, making coffee before another early meeting. The morning light caught the gold band on her finger, the same ring I'd slipped on 8 years ago, promising to love and honor her. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. "We need to talk about Wes," I said simply. She froze, coffee mug halfway to her lips. For a moment, her mask slipped, and I saw genuine fear in her eyes. Not fear of losing me, but fear of losing control of the narrative. "What about him?" "I know about the hotels, the Friday nights at his house, the lies about working late." She set down her mug carefully, buying time to calculate her response. "I don't know what you think you know, but I know you've been sleeping with him for 2 months. I know you charge hotel parking to our credit card. I know his address, his schedule, his car. I know everything, Erica." The silence stretched between us like a chasm. When she finally spoke, her voice was different, colder, more honest than it had been in months. "So what do you want? An apology? A promise to stop seeing him? What's the price for your silence?" The casual way she said it, like negotiating a business transaction, hit me harder than her initial confession. She wasn't sorry. She was just sorry she'd been caught. "I want to understand why you chose cruelty over honesty." "Cruelty?" She laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Nate, this isn't about cruelty. It's about feeling alive again. It's about remembering what it's like to be wanted, to be exciting, to be more than just someone's dependable wife. And that required lying to me for 2 months? It required protecting you from something you couldn't handle. Protecting me or protecting yourself?" She studied my face, looking for cracks in my composure. "Both, maybe. You've always been fragile when it comes to emotional things. I didn't want to hurt you unnecessarily." "Unnecessarily?" "Yes, because it doesn't mean anything, Nate. It's just physical, just fun. We used protection, so it's not like there are any real consequences. It doesn't change how I feel about you, about our marriage." There it was again, that magic phrase that somehow absolved her of responsibility. "We used protection, so it doesn't count." As if marriage was a game with technical loopholes. As if 8 years of commitment could be reduced to a question of contraception. I wanted her to see the rage building inside me. Wanted her to understand that she'd just reduced our entire relationship to a technicality. Instead, I gave her something far more unsettling. Complete calm. "I see," I said. "Thank you for clarifying that. That's it? You're not going to yell? Demand I choose between you and him? Threaten to leave? Would any of those things change anything?" She hesitated, and in that hesitation, I had my answer. She'd already made her choice. Everything else was just damage control. "I need some time to think," I said, gathering my keys and toolbox. "I'll be working late tonight." But I didn't go to work. I drove to a hardware store across town and bought supplies. Small items that individually meant nothing but together formed the foundation of something larger. Compressed air cartridges, industrial marking dye, a few electronic components. Nothing illegal, nothing dangerous, just tools for a different kind of repair job. That evening, I started with something simple, a test to see how carefully Wes Dalton paid attention to his surroundings. His Mustang was parked in his driveway, gleaming under the streetlights like a monument to his ego. I deflated all 4 tires with a simple valve stem tool, not slashed, just empty. An inconvenience, not vandalism. Then I moved to his garage door opener, using a small screwdriver to disable the receiver. He'd be able to open it manually from inside, but the remote wouldn't work. Another inconvenience. Finally, I opened his gas tank and poured in a bag of sugar. It wouldn't dissolve in gasoline, but it would create a syrupy mess that would clog fuel lines and destroy his engine over time. A $20 fix for a $20,000 problem. I was home by midnight, asleep in my own bed when Erica crept in 2 hours later. She moved like a guilty teenager, showering immediately, washing away the evidence of her evening. But she couldn't wash away the smell of hotel soap or the satisfied smile I glimpsed before she thought I was asleep. The next morning, my phone rang at 8 a.m. Erica panicked. "Nate, I need you to pick me up." My car has 4 flat tires, and Wes's car won't start. Something's wrong with his garage door, too. Can you come get me? I let her hear the smile in my voice. Of course, honey. Where are you? I stayed at Jade's last night. Her address is, I'll find it. Give me an hour. I took my time getting dressed, eating breakfast, reading the newspaper. Then I drove to Wes Dalton's house, where my wife was waiting on the front steps like a guilty teenager caught after curfew. She got into my van without meeting my eyes. Rough night? I asked. Jade's having some relationship problems. I didn't want to leave her alone. That's very thoughtful of you. We drove in silence for several minutes before she spoke again. It's weird about the cars. What are the odds that both of them would have problems on the same night? Pretty slim, I agreed, almost like someone wanted to strand you there. She looked at me sharply, but my expression was innocent, just a helpful husband picking up his wife after her night of charity work. You don't think, who would do something like that? I have no idea, but whoever it was knows cars pretty well, and they were probably watching the house to know which vehicles to target. The color drained from her face. Watching the house? Just a theory. Could have been random vandalism too. She was quiet for a long moment, processing the implications. Finally, she looked up at me with something like fear in her eyes. Nate, if someone was watching me, if someone knew about my friendship with Wes, about what, Erica? About us. I pulled into our driveway and put the van in park. Are you asking if I had anything to do with what happened last night? Did you? I was here all night. You can check the security system if you want. I armed it at 10 p.m. and didn't disarm it until you came home. All true. The security system showed I was home. It just didn't show when I left through the basement window that wasn't connected to the alarm. But if someone was watching, if they knew about us, then maybe you should be more careful about where you park your car. She stared at me for a long moment, trying to read my expression, looking for cracks in my facade. But I'd had weeks to practice this face. The concerned husband, the innocent victim. Maybe, she said finally, I should cool things down with Wes for a while. That's probably wise. Wouldn't want to give people the wrong impression. Right, the wrong impression. But even as she said it, I could see her phone buzzing with text messages, and I could see her fingers itching to respond. The sugar in Wes's gas tank would take a few days to do its work. The real damage would come when he tried to drive Monday morning, when the syrupy mess hit his fuel injection system and turned his engine into an expensive paperweight. I had time to prepare the next phase, and this time, the inconveniences would be far less convenient. While Erica was busy playing executive girlfriend, I played accountant. 8 years, and I could have done it with my eyes closed. Joint accounts became individual accounts. Shared assets became strategic positioning. Marital property became chess pieces in a game she didn't even know we were playing. The new checking account at First National took 15 minutes to open, transferring half our savings. My legal half, according to Ohio's equitable distribution laws, took another 10. I documented everything, kept every receipt, every transaction record. By the time Erica realized what was happening, the money would be safely beyond her reach. Todd met me for lunch at a diner downtown, sliding a manila folder across the cracked Formica table. You asked about TechFlow's HR policies, he said. My buddy in corporate security was happy to help. I flipped through the documents. Employee handbook, ethics guidelines, workplace relationship policies. Page after page of corporate legalese that boiled down to one simple truth. What Erica and Wes were doing violated about 6 different company regulations. TechFlow has a zero-tolerance policy for supervisor-subordinate relationships, Todd explained, especially when company time and resources are involved. Hotel meetings during billable hours, expense account abuse, potential sexual harassment claims. Your wife's affair is a legal landmine. And their biggest client, MedTech Industries, 70% of TechFlow's revenue. Very conservative company, very concerned about their public image. They find out their consulting fees were funding hotel room rendezvous. They'll drop TechFlow faster than a hot stone. I smiled, closing the folder. Perfect. Nate, you sure you want to go this route? Once you pull this trigger, there's no going back. She pulled the trigger when she decided I was too stupid to notice her affair. I'm just making sure the bullet finds its target. That afternoon, Erica announced she was taking Wes car shopping after work. His Mustang finally died completely, she said, applying fresh makeup in the bathroom mirror. He needs something reliable while it's in the shop. That's very helpful of you. We might be late. Car shopping takes time. I'm sure it does. She left at 7 a.m., earlier than usual, and according to my GPS tracker, went straight to Wes's house instead of the office. They spent an hour there before driving to TechFlow together in her car. I used the time to make some calls. Patricia Holbrook's office. I'd like to schedule a consultation about a divorce. Certainly. What type of situation are we dealing with? The messy kind. Patricia Holbrook had a reputation in town, the kind of lawyer other lawyers whispered about like a winter storm warning. She specialized in high-conflict divorces and had never lost a case where adultery was involved. Her office was all dark wood and intimidation, designed to make cheating spouses sweat through their expensive suits. I want everything, I told her, sliding my folders across her mahogany desk. The house, the cars, my retirement accounts. No alimony, no shared assets, no mercy. She spent an hour reviewing my documentation, occasionally whistling under her breath. This is very thorough, she said finally. Very methodical. You've been planning this for a while. I've been documenting a marriage in decline. There's a difference, not from a legal standpoint. The question is, what are you hoping to accomplish? Financial victory? Emotional satisfaction? Simple revenge? I thought about that for a moment. Justice. Justice costs money, lots of money. Are you prepared for that? Are you prepared to win? She smiled, a predatory expression that reminded me why people feared her. Mr. Fisher, I don't take cases I can't win, but I need to know you understand what's coming. This won't be a quiet dissolution. Your wife will fight, her lover will panic, and everyone they know will learn exactly what kind of people they are. Can you handle that level of exposure? Can they? That's what we're about to find out. Erica came home at 10 p.m., flushed and excited. We found the perfect car, she announced. A BMW 3 Series, barely used. Wes is getting such a good deal. That's great. How's he paying for it? Her smile faltered slightly. Well, that's the thing. His credit is tied up with the divorce proceedings. I'm going to co-sign the loan. I set down my beer and looked at her. Really looked at her. Erica, you want to co-sign a $40,000 loan for your boss? For my friend. And it's not $40,000, it's $38,500. Your friend who you've been sleeping with for 3 months. The color drained from her face. I told you, that's not... I know about the hotels, the Friday nights, the lingerie, the new perfume. I know about all of it. She stared at me, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. The question is, I continued, what are we going to do about it? I don't know what you want me to say. I want you to say you'll call the dealership tomorrow and cancel that loan application. I can't do that. Wes is counting on me, and I'm your husband. You're also being unreasonable. I stood up, walked to the kitchen counter, and picked up the bank statement that had arrived that morning, the one showing our savings account balance. You want to know what's unreasonable? I handed her the statement. This. She looked at it, confused. What am I looking at? Our savings account. Notice anything different? Her eyes widened as she saw the balance. Where's the money? Safe, in an account that doesn't have your name on it. You can't do that. That's our money. Actually, it's my money, earned during our marriage, which makes it marital property, which means I'm entitled to half. I took exactly half. You're being vindictive. I'm being practical. You just committed us to a $40,000 loan without consulting me. Clearly, I need to protect our remaining assets. She sank into a chair, the bank statement trembling in her hands. What do you want from me? I want you to choose. Choose what? Him or me? The affair or the marriage? You can't have both. It's not that simple. It's exactly that simple. She was quiet for a long moment, staring at the bank statement like it might change if she looked hard enough. And if I choose you, then it ends with Wes. Completely. No more meetings, no more hotels, no more car loans. You transfer to a different department or find a new job. We go to counseling. We try to rebuild. And if I choose him, then we get divorced. You can co-sign all the loans you want with your own money. She looked up at me, and for the first time in months, I saw the real Erica, not the manipulative woman who'd been lying to me, but the scared, desperate person underneath. I need time to think. You have until Friday. But I could already see the decision in her eyes, and it wasn't the one I'd hoped for. That night, I sat in my workshop and finalized my plans. The paperwork was ready, the evidence was documented, and Patricia Holbrook was waiting for my call. Friday couldn't come soon enough. Wednesday morning brought a text message that changed everything. Can't do this anymore. Choose him. Want the divorce. I stared at the words over my coffee, feeling something that might have been disappointment. Part of me had hoped she'd fight for us, that she'd realize what she was throwing away. The bigger part of me was relieved. Now the gloves could come off. I forwarded the message to Patricia Holbrook with a note. It's time. She called back within minutes. You sure about this? She made her choice. What do you need? Everything we discussed, and I need it fast. Give me 2 hours. Patricia Holbrook was a thorough as promised. By lunch, I had divorce papers drafted, financial affidavits prepared, and a legal strategy that would have made Sun Tzu proud. But the real weapon wasn't legal maneuvering. It was information. Todd arrived at my house that afternoon with 2 manila folders thick enough to choke a horse. 3 months of surveillance, he said, dropping them on my kitchen table. Hotel receipts, restaurant charges on credit cards, GPS locations, photographs, all legally obtained. I flipped through the evidence, page after page of my wife's deception documented in excruciating detail. This is everything? That's just the appetizer. The main course is in the second folder. The second folder contained employment records for TechFlow Solutions, HR policies, ethics guidelines, client contracts, and most importantly, information about their biggest account, MedTech Industries, Todd explained. 70% of TechFlow's revenue. Very conservative company, very concerned about public image. They find out their consulting fees were funding hotel room meetings between a supervisor and subordinate. They'll drop TechFlow like a hot stone, faster than that. And guess who's going to be held responsible for the loss of their biggest client? I smiled, closing the folder. Wes Dalton and his entire unit. Exactly. Your wife picked a winner, all right. A winner who's about to lose everything. That evening, I called Patricia Holbrook. I want to add something to the divorce filing. What kind of something? A request for full disclosure of all workplace relationships and potential ethics violations. If Erica wants to drag this through the courts, let's make sure everyone understands exactly what kind of person she is. That's aggressive. That's thorough. Can you do it? I can do it. But once we file this, there's no going back. Your wife's affair becomes public record. Her employer will be forced to investigate. Her lover's career will be destroyed. Are you prepared for that level of nuclear warfare? I thought about 8 years of marriage, 8 years of trust and fidelity and commitment, reduced to, it doesn't count because we used protection. I'm prepared for justice. Justice or revenge? Is there a difference? Friday morning arrived like Christmas, and Judgment Day rolled into one. Patricia Holbrook's office served Erica with divorce papers at her workplace, complete with detailed accounting of the affair, and a request for full disclosure of all workplace relationships. According to Todd's contact at TechFlow, she was called into HR immediately afterward. The papers included dates, locations, financial expenditures, and most damaging of all, hotel receipts that showed charges during business hours, billable hours that TechFlow had charged to MedTech Industries. By noon, Wes Dalton had been called into HR as well. By 2 p.m., both of them were suspended pending a full investigation. Erica called me, hysterical. You bastard! You got us both fired! I didn't get anyone fired. You violated company policy. I just made sure the company knew about it. This is my career. You should have thought of that before you decided to sleep with your boss on company time. We never... She stopped, realizing the trap she'd walked into. The hotel receipts show charges during business hours, Erica. You were billing TechFlow for the time you spent screwing Wes at the Marriott. That's fraud. Billing a client for services not rendered. The line went quiet. I'm sure their biggest client, MedTech Industries, will be very interested to know how their consulting fees were actually being spent. You're destroying my life. I'm revealing your choices. There's a difference. By evening, the fallout had spread beyond TechFlow. Todd called with an update that was almost too good to believe. Wes Dalton's wife filed for divorce this afternoon, he reported. Apparently, she's been building her own case for months. The TechFlow situation just gave her the ammunition she needed. His wife knew about the affair. She knew about all of them. Turns out your wife wasn't Wes's first workplace conquest, or his second, or his third. The scope of it was staggering. How many others? At least 4 that they know of. All employees, all during company time, all potential lawsuits waiting to happen. The HR investigation is turning up everything. Phone records, hotel receipts, credit card statements. Your wife was just the most recent in a long line of workplace conquests. I should have felt vindicated, but instead I felt something closer to pity. Erica hadn't been special, hadn't been chosen. She'd just been convenient. She'd blown up her marriage, her career, and her future for a man who saw her as just another notch on his belt. There's more, Todd continued. Wes's wife is claiming half of everything in the divorce, plus alimony, plus child support for their 2 kids. And with the ethics violations and potential lawsuits, his career is effectively over. He'll be lucky to find work managing a McDonald's. And Erica, unemployed, unemployable in her field, and facing a divorce that will leave her with nothing. Oh, and one more thing. She missed her period. The words hit me like a physical blow. What? She's pregnant. Jade let it slip at the grocery store. Apparently, your wife's been dealing with morning sickness on top of everything else. I sat down hard, the phone suddenly heavy in my hand. Whose is it? That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? But given the timeline and the frequency of their hotel meetings, I'd say the odds aren't in your favor. After I hung up, I sat in my kitchen staring at the divorce papers spread across the table. 8 years of marriage, reduced to legal documents and financial calculations. But now, there was a new variable in the equation. A child that might or might not be mine, conceived during a period when our intimate life had dwindled to almost nothing. I picked up the phone and called Patricia Holbrook. We need to add a paternity test to the divorce proceedings. Already on it, she said. Given the timeline and circumstances, it's a standard request. But Mr. Fisher, you should know, if the child is yours, it changes the financial calculations significantly. And if it's not, then your wife's lover is about to discover that consequences have a way of multiplying when you least expect them. I hung up the phone and poured myself a beer. Outside, the sun was setting on what had been a very productive day. Erica and Wes were both suspended, facing investigations that would end their careers. His wife was filing for divorce and would take him for everything he had. And somewhere in the middle of it all was a pregnancy that would either be my responsibility or the final nail in Waisander and Wes Dalton's coffin. Justice was messy, complicated, and expensive, but it was also inevitable. Some people learned that lesson early in life. Others, like my wife and her lover, were about to get a crash course in consequences. 3 weeks after the divorce papers were served, the dominoes began falling with mathematical precision. Each consequence triggered the next, creating a cascade of destruction that would have been beautiful if it wasn't so personal. Friday morning brought news that MedTech Industries had terminated their contract with TechFlow, effective immediately. The loss of 70% of their revenue sent shockwaves through the company. By lunch, Wes Dalton's entire consulting unit had been dissolved. By close of business, 6 people were unemployed, including the man who'd thought sleeping with subordinates was a consequence-free activity. The HR investigation was brutal, Todd reported over drinks at Murphy's. They found everything: hotel receipts during billable hours, company credit cards used for personal expenses, a pattern of sexual harassment going back 3 years. Wes wasn't just cheating on his wife. He was systematically abusing his position to coerce female employees. I took a long pull from my beer, tasting the bitterness. How many others came forward? 3 so far. His secretary, a marketing coordinator, and an intern from last summer. All of them had similar stories. Late meetings that weren't meetings, business trips that were anything but business, promises of advancement in exchange for companionship. The scope of it made my stomach turn. Erica hadn't been seduced by a charming boss. She'd been manipulated by a predator. It didn't excuse her choices, but it explained them in a way that almost made me feel sorry for her. Almost. What about Wes's divorce? Brutal. His wife hired Rebecca Martinez, the one who specializes in high-asset cases where the husband is a cheating scumbag. She's going for everything: the house, both cars, his retirement accounts, plus alimony and child support. With the ethics violations and termination for cause, he doesn't have much leverage to negotiate. I did the math in my head. He'll be broke, worse than broke. Martinez is claiming he used marital assets to fund his affairs: hotel rooms, dinners, gifts. She's asking for reimbursement plus damages. Even if he finds another job, he'll be paying for this for the next 20 years. Meanwhile, Erica was discovering that consequences didn't pause for morning sickness or unemployment. The BMW loan application had been denied when her employment status changed from stable professional to terminated for ethics violations. Without a job or verifiable income, she was suddenly persona non grata in the financial world. She'd moved in with her mother, a bitter woman who'd spent 8 years telling anyone who'd listen that her daughter had married beneath her station. Now she was faced with the reality that her perfect daughter was unemployed, pregnant, and facing a divorce that would leave her with nothing. According to neighborhood gossip, Their reunion was explosive. Mrs. Patterson had expected to welcome home a successful career woman escaping an unsatisfying marriage. Instead, she got an unemployed adulteress whose affair had destroyed not just her own life, but the lives of everyone around her. Tuesday evening, Erica showed up at my door, looking like she hadn't slept in days. Her face was pale, her eyes red-rimmed, and for the first time since I'd known her, she looked genuinely defeated. "Can we talk?" she asked. "What's left to talk about?" "I made a mistake, a huge, terrible mistake, but we can fix this. I'll do anything, counseling, therapy, whatever you want. Just don't go through with the divorce." "Why?" "Because you lost your job? Because Wes turned out to be a serial predator? Because you're about to lose everything? Because I love you." I studied her face, looking for any sign of genuine emotion beneath the desperation. "No, you don't. You love the idea of not facing the consequences of your choices alone." "That's not true, isn't it? Where was this love when you were meeting him at hotels? Where was this love when you were co-signing car loans? Where was this love when you texted me that you were choosing him?" She started crying, ugly, desperate sobs that should have moved me but didn't. "I can't do this alone." "You should have thought of that before you made sure you wouldn't have to." "What does that mean?" "Where's Wes, Erica? Why isn't he here supporting the woman he chose over his wife and kids?" Her silence was confirmation enough. "He dumped you," I said. "The moment the investigation started, he was gone, just like he dumped the secretary and the marketing coordinator and whoever else. That's what predators do. They run when things get complicated. So, what am I supposed to do?" "You're supposed to figure it out like an adult, like someone who makes choices and lives with the consequences. I can't raise a baby alone." The words hung between us like a confession. She was pregnant, and we both knew the timeline made my paternity unlikely. The revelation should have hurt more than it did. Instead, it felt like the final piece of a puzzle clicking into place. "You should have thought of that before you decided to have unprotected sex with your boss." Her face went white. "We used protection. I told you." "The condoms had holes in them," I said quietly. "Tiny little holes made with an insulin needle. Amazing what you can learn on YouTube." The realization hit her like a physical blow. She staggered backward, her hand instinctively moving to her stomach. "You sabotaged the condoms? I gave you exactly what you asked for. A consequence-free affair. No strings attached. Just fun." "You're insane." "I'm thorough. There's a difference." She stared at me like she was seeing me for the first time, and maybe she was. For 8 years, she'd been married to a man she thought was predictable, passive, manageable. Now she was discovering that still waters run deeper than anyone expects. "Who are you?" she whispered. "I'm the man you chose to betray. I'm the husband you decided to humiliate. I'm the person you thought was too stupid, too passive, too predictable to fight back." "I never thought you were stupid." "Yes, you did. You thought you could manage me, control the situation, have your cake and eat it too. You thought you were smarter than everyone else. What happens now? Now you get to find out how smart you really are." The next morning, I called Patricia Holbrook with an update on our strategy. "I want to accelerate the timeline," I told her. "File for emergency hearings on asset division and paternity testing." "What's the rush?" "She's pregnant, unemployed, and desperate. Desperate people make bad decisions. I want those decisions on the record before she has time to think them through. That's calculating. That's chess, and I'm 3 moves ahead." Within a week, the paternity test was scheduled, and the financial disclosures were complete. Erica's lawyer, a harried public defender who specialized in quick settlements, was pushing for mediation. My lawyer was pushing for trial. "Let a jury hear about the affair," Patricia advised. "Let them hear about the fraud, the pregnancy, the systematic deception. Let them decide what 8 years of marriage is worth when one spouse spends 3 months of it in hotel rooms with her boss." The preliminary hearing was scheduled for the following month. By then, the paternity results would be in, the financial records would be finalized, and everyone involved would understand exactly what they were dealing with. Justice wasn't just being served. It was being engineered with the same methodical precision I brought to every HVAC system I'd ever repaired. And just like those systems, the most important work happened behind the scenes, where most people never thought to look. The call came at 11:30 p.m. on a Wednesday. Todd's voice was urgent, cutting through my sleep-fogged brain like an alarm. "Wes Dalton is drunk and desperate," he said without preamble. "My contact at the Riverside Police says he's been drinking at Murphy's for 6 hours, talking about how you destroyed his life. Nate, I think he's planning something stupid." I sat up in bed, instantly alert. Like what? Like breaking into your house, like confronting you, like trying to find evidence that you sabotaged his life so he can shift blame away from his own choices. I walked to the window and peered out at the street, empty except for the usual parked cars and streetlights casting their amber pools on the asphalt. But somewhere out there was a desperate man with nothing left to lose, and desperate men were unpredictable. What do you think he wants? Money, probably, or evidence he can use to blame someone else for his problems. Maybe he thinks you have something on him, something he can destroy. Desperate people don't think clearly. I thought about my workshop, my carefully organized files, the documentation of months of methodical planning. There was nothing illegal in those folders, but there was enough evidence of my involvement to make things complicated. I need 20 minutes, I said. 20 minutes for what? To prepare a welcome. I'd learned a lot about home security during my years as an HVAC technician. Alarm systems, motion sensors, camera placement. It was all part of the job when you worked in people's houses. But I'd also learned about the creative applications of those systems, the ways they could be modified and enhanced for purposes their manufacturers never intended. I started in the workshop, rigging a compressed air system using components from my HVAC supplies. Industrial-grade marking dye, the kind used to trace leaks in air conditioning systems, mixed with water and loaded into cartridges connected to motion sensors. Nothing dangerous, nothing that would cause permanent harm, but something that would mark an intruder in a way that couldn't be easily removed. The hallway from the back door got the full treatment. Tripwires connected to more compressed air systems, each one loaded with purple dye that would spray anyone moving through the space. By the time I was finished, my house was booby-trapped, like something out of a cartoon, designed to humiliate rather than injure. Finally, I set up my phone to record continuously, positioned to capture the main entry points. If Wes was stupid enough to break into my house, I wanted every second of his stupidity documented. He came at 3 a.m., just as Todd had predicted. The motion sensors in my driveway triggered the exterior floodlights, illuminating a figure stumbling toward the back door. Even from my bedroom window, I could see he was drunk, unsteady on his feet, moving with the exaggerated care of someone trying not to fall down. I activated the intercom system, using the house's ventilation ducts to carry my voice throughout the building. It was a trick I'd learned years ago, turning the entire house into a speaker system that made it impossible to pinpoint where the sound was coming from. The first trap triggered when he forced the back door open. The compressed air system activated immediately, spraying him with a mixture of water and purple dye. He stumbled backward, cursing, his white shirt now tie-dyed in brilliant purple. But he didn't run. Instead, he wiped his face and pushed into the house. "Hello, Wes," I said through the intercom. "Welcome to my home." He spun around, looking for the source of the voice, dripping purple water onto my kitchen floor. "Where are you, you bastard?" he shouted. "I know you're here. I'm everywhere and nowhere," I replied, letting my voice echo through the vents. "But you're trespassing, you're drunk, and you're carrying what looks like a crowbar. This isn't going to end well for you." He started moving through the house, looking for me, triggering the traps I'd set in sequence. Each doorway brought another spray of purple dye, another layer of humiliation. By the time he reached the living room, he looked like a walking bruise, purple from head to toe and furious beyond reason. "You ruined my life," he screamed at the ceiling. "My job, my wife, my kids. You took everything." "I didn't take anything," I replied through the intercom. "You lost your job because you were committing fraud. You lost your wife because you were cheating. You lost your kids because you chose sex over family. I just made sure people knew what kind of man you really are. You sabotaged my car. You set me up. I gave you consequences, something you've apparently never experienced before." He was in my living room now, swinging the crowbar at furniture, destroying my coffee table and lamp in a rage-fueled tantrum. Each swing sent purple droplets flying, staining the walls like abstract art. But every swing was being recorded from multiple angles, documenting his breakdown for posterity. "Where's the money?" he demanded. "I know you took money from me." "What money would that be, Wes?" "The BMW deal, the loan you sabotaged. You cost me $40,000. You cost yourself $40,000 when you decided to have your girlfriend co-sign a loan she couldn't afford. I just made sure the bank had accurate information about her employment status." He stopped swinging and stood in the middle of my ruined living room, purple and panting, and finally understanding that he'd walked into a trap. Red and blue lights were flashing through the windows now. The police, alerted by the silent alarm I'd triggered when he broke down the door. "This isn't over," he said, looking directly at one of my cameras. "Yes, it is," I replied. "It's been over since you decided to sleep with my wife in hotel rooms during billable hours. Everything since then has just been cleanup." The police found him sitting on my couch, purple and defeated, the crowbar on the floor beside him. They arrested him for breaking and entering, destruction of property, and violation of the restraining order I'd filed that afternoon. Another precaution Todd had suggested. As they led him away in handcuffs, purple dye still dripping from his clothes, he looked back at me standing in my doorway. "You destroyed everything," he said. "No," I replied. "I just turned on the lights." By morning, the security camera footage was all over social media. Someone, probably one of the responding officers, had shared the video of Wes's purple-dyed rampage through my house. It went viral within hours. Cheating boss breaks into victim's home, gets colorful justice. The comments were overwhelmingly supportive. People loved seeing a cheater get his comeuppance, loved the ingenuity of the traps, loved the fact that justice had been served with a sense of humor. The video had 2 million views by lunch and was trending on 3 different platforms. Erica called that afternoon, her voice small and defeated. "I saw the video. Everyone saw the video. He came to see me first," she said quietly, "before he went to your house. He was drunk and angry and talking about how you'd ruined everything. I told him to go home, but he said he needed to find evidence, something to prove you were behind all his problems." "And what did you tell him?" "I told him he was behind his own problems, that sleeping with employees and committing fraud had consequences, that maybe he should have thought about that before he decided to destroy his marriage and his career." There was a long pause. "I also told him the baby wasn't his." The words hit me like a physical blow. "What?" "The paternity test results came in this morning. The baby is yours, Nate." I sat down hard, the phone suddenly heavy in my hand. After all the planning, all the assumptions, all the mathematical certainties about timelines and conception dates, the one variable I'd been most sure about had turned out to be wrong. How was that possible? Remember March 15th? It was raining, and we'd had that fight about your mother's birthday dinner. We made up that night, and her voice trailed off. It was the only time that month, but it was enough. I closed my eyes, trying to process this new reality. All my careful calculations, all my assumptions about the pregnancy being Wes's final responsibility, all of it had been wrong. The child was mine, which changed everything about the divorce, about the future, about what came next. "What do you want me to say, Erica?" "I want you to say we can work this out, that we can be a family, that 8 years of marriage and a baby on the way is worth more than 3 months of mistakes." I looked around my purple-stained living room, at the broken furniture and the cameras still recording everything, at the evidence of how far I'd been willing to go for revenge. "I don't know," I said honestly. "I don't know if I can forget what you did. I don't know if I can trust you again. I don't know if the man I've become is someone who can be a good husband or father. But you'll think about it." "I'll think about it." But even as I said the words, I knew the answer. Some things, once broken, couldn't be repaired. Some betrayals cut too deep to heal. And some people, once they'd tasted the satisfaction of perfect revenge, found it impossible to go back to being the forgiving, passive person they'd been before. The baby changed the mathematics of the divorce, but it didn't change the fundamental equation. Trust, once lost, was the hardest thing in the world to rebuild. And I wasn't sure I had the energy or the desire to try. The paternity results sat on my kitchen table like an unexploded bomb, reshaping everything I thought I knew about endings and consequences. For 3 months, I'd operated under the assumption that Erica's pregnancy was the final piece of evidence in her betrayal. Now it was the one thing tying us together, whether we wanted it or not. Patricia Holbrook's office felt different when I arrived for our final meeting. The dark wood and intimidation that had seemed so appropriate for vengeance now felt heavy, oppressive, like furniture in a funeral home. "The paternity results change our strategy significantly," she said, spreading legal documents across her desk like tarot cards, predicting an uncertain future. "You're no longer just dividing assets between estranged spouses. You're now dealing with child custody, support obligations, and the complex question of what's best for the child." I studied the papers, custody agreements, visitation schedules, support calculations, the legal framework for a future I hadn't wanted or expected. What are my options? Several, You can pursue full custody, citing your wife's affair and termination for cause as evidence of poor judgment. You can agree to joint custody and shared financial responsibility. Or, she paused, choosing her words carefully, you can walk away entirely, sign away your parental rights and obligations. The third option hung in the air like a challenge. After everything Erica had done, after all the lies and betrayal and calculated cruelty, I could simply disappear. No custody battles, no child support, no forced interactions with a woman who destroyed our marriage. Clean break, fresh start, complete freedom. What would you recommend? As your lawyer, walking away is the cleanest option. As someone who's seen what happens when parents abandon their children, she shook her head. That's a decision you'll live with for the rest of your life. That evening, I sat in my workshop among the tools and evidence that had defined the past 3 months of my life. File folders full of surveillance photos, bank statements documenting financial manipulation, legal documents outlining the systematic destruction of my marriage. All of it would be moot if I chose to walk away. Todd found me there at midnight, nursing a beer and staring at the wall. Heard about the paternity results, he said, pulling up a chair. Changes things, changes everything. So what are you going to do? I'd been asking myself the same question for hours. I don't know. Part of me wants to fight for custody, prove that Erica's an unfit mother. Part of me wants to disappear, start over somewhere else. And part of me, I trailed off. Part of you what? Part of me wonders if I've become someone who shouldn't be around children. Todd was quiet for a moment, considering my words. You mean because of what you did to Wes? The traps, the humiliation, the systematic destruction of his life? All of it. The planning, the manipulation, the satisfaction I felt watching everything fall apart. What kind of person does that make me? The kind who is pushed too far by people who thought you were weak? Or the kind who's capable of cruelty when it suits his purposes? We sat in comfortable silence, two middle-aged men contemplating the line between justice and revenge, between protection and destruction. You know what I think? Todd said finally. I think you're overthinking this. You're not a monster, Nate. You're a guy who got betrayed and decided to fight back with the same methodical approach you bring to everything else. That doesn't make you evil. It makes you human. Human enough to be a father? That's the question, isn't it? The answer came sooner than expected. 3 days later, Erica showed up at my door, looking worse than I'd ever seen her. Her face was pale, her eyes sunken, and she moved with the careful deliberation of someone dealing with severe morning sickness. We need to talk, she said. About what? About the baby. About us. About what happens next. I led her into the living room, noting how she avoided looking at the purple stains on the walls, evidence of Wes's desperate break-in that had become a viral sensation. She sat carefully on the edge of the couch, one hand instinctively protecting her stomach. I've been thinking about what you said, she began, about consequences and choices and taking responsibility for my actions. And you're right. I made terrible decisions. I lied to you, betrayed you, threw away 8 years of marriage for something that was never real. I hurt you in ways I'm only beginning to understand. The apology should have meant something, should have been the first step toward healing, toward finding a way forward. Instead, it felt like another manipulation, another calculated move in a game that had already been decided. What do you want, Erica? I want to know if there's any possibility of us working this out. Not for me, but for the baby. Children deserve to have both parents, deserve to grow up in a stable home with people who love them. You should have thought about that before you decided to sleep with your boss. I know, and I'll regret those choices for the rest of my life. But the baby didn't make those choices. The baby is innocent in all of this. She was right, of course. The child growing inside her hadn't chosen to be conceived during the worst period of our marriage, hadn't chosen to have a mother who'd destroyed her family or a father who'd responded with systematic revenge. The baby was truly innocent, caught between two people who'd made terrible choices for very different reasons. What are you proposing? Joint custody, shared responsibility. We don't have to be married, don't even have to like each other, but we can both be parents to our child. And you think you're capable of being a good mother after everything that's happened? Her eyes filled with tears, but she held my gaze. I don't know, but I want to try. I want to be better than I've been. Do better than I've done. Maybe having something innocent to protect will help me remember who I used to be before I became someone who could betray the man who loved her. I studied her face, looking for signs of the manipulative woman who'd lied to me for months. What I saw instead was someone who looked genuinely broken by the consequences of her choices. Someone who might actually be capable of change. I need time to think. How much time? As much as I need? She nodded, understanding that she was in no position to make demands. I'll be staying with my mother until the baby comes. You know where to find me when you've decided. After she left, I called Patricia Holbrook with my decision. I want joint custody, I said. 50-50 split, shared financial responsibility. But I want it documented that the mother's affair and termination for cause are part of the record. That's surprisingly reasonable. I'm a reasonable man who got pushed into unreasonable circumstances. And the financial settlement? I keep the house, my retirement accounts, and my tools. She keeps her personal belongings and whatever debt she's accumulated. No alimony. She'll accept those terms. She'll accept whatever terms allow her to remain in her child's life. The final hearing was scheduled for the following month. By then, the viral video of Wes's break-in had been viewed over 10 million times, making our divorce a minor internet sensation. Comments ranged from supportive to critical, but most people seemed to understand that sometimes ordinary people got pushed too far and pushed back in extraordinary ways. Wes himself was facing criminal charges for breaking and entering, destruction of property, and violation of a restraining order. His divorce from his wife was proceeding with the same mathematical precision I'd brought to my own, leaving him with nothing but debt and the purple-stained reputation that would follow him wherever he went. Erica's job prospects remained dim. Word had spread through the industry about the TechFlow scandal, making her essentially unemployable in her field. She would have to start over, rebuild her career from scratch, while raising a child and dealing with the reputation that followed her like a shadow. As for me, I returned to work fixing other people's broken systems, carrying the knowledge that sometimes the most important repairs happened after everything fell apart. The methodical approach that had served me so well in revenge would serve me just as well in fatherhood. Patience, precision, and the understanding that some problems required long-term solutions. The night before the final hearing, I built a fire in my backyard and burned all the evidence I'd collected over the past 6 months. Surveillance photos, bank statements, hotel receipts, GPS logs. All of it went into the flames, curling and blackening and turning to ash. 8 years of marriage and 3 months of systematic revenge, reduced to smoke and memory. When it was done, I sat in the darkness and thought about the future. In 6 months, I would be a divorced father, sharing custody of a child with a woman I no longer trusted but would have to learn to co-parent with. It wasn't the ending I'd imagined when this all started, but it was the ending that served justice, not just for me, but for an innocent child who deserved better than the circumstances of their conception. Some people spend their whole lives waiting for justice to be served by someone else. Others learn that sometimes you have to engineer it yourself, with the same methodical precision you'd bring to fixing a broken air conditioner. The key is knowing when to stop, when the system is balanced again, when the temperature is finally just right. I was done. The house felt different now, lighter, cleaner, like the air itself had been purified. Tomorrow, I would sign papers that would officially end my marriage and begin my journey as a single father. But tonight, I would sit in my workshop and savor the taste of a job completed, a system repaired, a balance restored. Justice, I'd learned, wasn't always about punishment. Sometimes it was about consequences. Sometimes it was about truth. And sometimes, if you were very careful and very thorough, it was about making sure that everyone involved understood exactly what their choices had cost them. The baby would be born in 4 months. By then, the purple stains would be painted over, the broken furniture replaced, the viral videos forgotten by everyone except the people who lived through them. But the lessons would remain. Lessons about trust and betrayal, about consequences and responsibility, about the difference between revenge and justice. I finished my beer and headed inside, turning off the lights and locking the doors. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new repairs, new systems that needed fixing. But tonight, for the first time in months, my own system was running perfectly. Not too hot, not too cold, but exactly the right temperature for whatever came next.